I am going to be reading some poems today that are kind of wide-ranging in terms of being new, old, and I always kind of like to start with a poem that's newer, just because I really think of poetry as a risk, and why not try something that I'm not 100% comfortable with. Poetry should make you feel a little weird and like kind of icky sometimes, and so besides this wonderful tree next to me, which is calming me down as I kind of get nervous that I don't think I actually read this poem out loud. So I'll start with that, and then I'll read some poems from my upcoming book, it is 2016, so it's coming out in September. So I'm excited about that. But the first poem I'll read is called The Frontier. The frontier arranges itself around me like a moat. The frontier drops fruit upon my head. I break open hot cantaloupe in winter. I wobble around, spilling fruit everywhere. All day, fruit flies pay their respects. Dear beloved country, dear beloved super funds and farm turbines and corn ruin. Go sweetly into the light, fluorescent and pinker than any tongue I could pray to have. And can't I have what I've been promised, this shore and this sea shining always thereafter? I asked for too much. That was the problem. In a sky lit with smoke, my mother peels shrimp, and I carry the shells into the yard and bury them. What we plant will grow twofold, or so we've been told. Frontier, shed thy grace on thee. Grace descends like locusts. Onion grass sprouts along my father's beard, all awry. The frontier mills about in the yard without a rake or shovel or hand to give out. The frontier warns me, an eye for an eye as far as the eye can see, and what is there to see? Fields upon fields of frost, of rusty shipping containers, of highway rest stops my grandmother steals napkins from. Is it worth it, I ask her, to live in this place where you fill your pockets with stones? My grandmother opens her eyes in the middle of the night. What you have not noticed asks you to look again. A new car arrives, and my mother beams with the pride of a glowworm. She's spun to the nines, gold dripping from her ears like wax. Even the flies along the windowsill turn to gold. It's hard to breathe in this luxurious air. I walk around the house with a mask. There's construction in the garage, construction in the kitchen. Every immigrant has that one drawer full of plastic bags and plastic bags. We open them when we knock a wall down. Tessellations of the frontier, bags floating off in great northern air. Go forth, my thank yous, my popped plastic cheeks, my lunch money hunkering down in clouds. Ruin gives back whether you want such charity or not. In this country, hurricanes have the name of any decent receptionist. Sandy, my mother says, hacking at palm branches with her cleaver. Sandy, the refinery in our throats and eyes, diamonds and dimes. In Jersey, to exit the front door, you better be a customer. Even the moths leave through the alleyway, wings slick with brittle grease. In the alley, my brother and I jump on mountains of cardboard and packing peanuts. I swallowed a packing peanut once, and plastic leaked from my eyes. Sandy, wipe away your tears. My mother braces her back against the ribs of a hallway arch. I should also say I'm from Jersey, if you haven't noticed already. And also, if you haven't noticed already, my mother is kind of always in my poems. I can't really help that. I really can't. Like, I feel like I'm compelled, as if like there's a magnet, and it's like, get over here. You know, there's everyone kind of asks me sometimes, I was just asked, like, how do your parents react to the fact that you write poems? And my answer to that is, I don't tell them. And so, like, my family didn't know I was a writer for a very long time. And my mother, the first time she ever read me, or heard me read a piece, was actually at my college graduation when I was actually a fiction writer, and I read a fiction piece. And it was in front of it was an entire graduation, so I was reading in front of everyone. And she came up to me afterwards, and I'd never seen my mother cry. I'd only seen her cry once in my life, and this was the time. And she came up to me, and she had been crying, and she put her kind of arm on my shoulder, and she said, "Is this what you do?" So, and then the next time she saw me read was definitely over kind of 10 years recently for the bestseller in poetry reading in New York. And that time I embarrassed her and made her stand up in front of the entire auditorium in the school. Everyone clapped for her. So she liked that. She thinks she's a star. She is a star. Speaking of which, I sometimes write in my mother's voice as well. So I care a lot about kind of like persona poems. And I wanted to do this kind of lifelong project where I just take a year in her life. So be 4, 25, 37, 44, and just write in her voice from that time in her life. And I want to do this until I die. So it's going to be in every book. If more books come, there are always going to be these years. The first book that's coming out has, I think, 5 of them. And so they'll continue, but I'd like to read one for you all tonight, maybe 2. This is 24. A little just set up, she was arranged for marriage when she was 19. 24. Salt can dissolve more, such is the law. Antlers shine, bone clean in our yard. Buzzards at the bus stop count off children. We have 2 children. To see how we truly behave, we must lie side by side and let anger slide. This stupefied air we hold a knife to the neck. These nights crickets rave at the door. Lamb's ear sprouts of leprosy, softening the yard. Our daughter covers her mouth, smog of the heart. Cloud and cough, I couldn't even see my hands in the morning. The sky breaks open, how I break my roots from you, overpour of regret. There is too much blood in a cow to comprehend. At 20, I halved caution and called it Jane. To want all that is yours, I married you, marred you, missed your kill, a kiss for what? A continent away, hay pours into a field. Each time my father waves across the shore, I dissolve one part more. 30. That's younger than I am right now. 30. Summer mold knits the parkway, headlights of velvet. With what eyes can I see through such bright confines? My husband hits a tree at 55, and we spin a couple of lanes. My eyes double over, as if in love or at once lonely. We spin, and the insides of the car spill, all sick in a marsh of whiskey water. Cigarette ash soothes Stephen's wild teething. He is awake and blinking to see anything. Cars slow down to watch us flail. All around us, mosquitoes ignite small fires, and they are our fires. A country away, I hear oxen snorting in milk-colored fog. But in this country, in the small fires of this spinning house, the fingers of a highway fern are brushing my lungs awake. I got in a big car accident. I was too young to remember, which is why I just kind of made that up. My imagination just imagined what it was like. The next poem, not surprisingly, starts with my mom again. But it has a little bit more to do with thinking a little bit about where I come from. And I think when I usually try to kind of teach the idea of roots, we have this idea that we have roots, right, in our family, in our lineage, our legacy. But roots, and this is totally stolen from the scholar Stuart Hall, roots can be spelled with R-O-O-T-S, right, and R-O-U-T-E-S. So roots as in tree roots, but also roots as in where we travel. And every single place we go becomes our history and our also lineage. And so I was thinking a lot about what does it mean to want some sort of rooted space, as if we are tied to something, like a family tree. But what happens in reality when there's so much migration and movement, and oftentimes dislocation, and unexpected journeys that that the roots with the R-O-U-T-S becomes also part of your history. So I was thinking a lot about that when I was writing this poem. I was also thinking about blood cube soup. For those, has anyone had some blood cube before? Yes? Okay. And it's very specific flavor. Any of you had it or not had it. It is super metallic and it's kind of sweet and weirdly bitter. And I was thinking a lot about that. It's my mom's favorite snack. So this poem's called Blood. My mother told me not to drink pig's blood unless I desire health. Gold should not enter the heart or be melted into teeth. But look how our faces shine, these crystallizing caves caved in to keep our bloody splendor. Now you know where I've been. Black ink on palm, hummus night. Face to face we fought in glory, in red and arms our own. The police filled the streets with shove and see. Little stars, little flashlights in my hair. To clear myself from blame, I erased my birthmarks. Held under strong sunlight, everything disappears or blooms. Peaches fall in the yard as we fall asleep, stunned and sweet. The saying goes and goes. Keep your eyes closed when walking. Keep your close ones loved and close them. Walk hand in hand among the graves. To lead a people into disaster. To boil a chicken with its head cut off. Why would someone do such a thing? 100 flowers explode over our heads. I took shelter in stems and seed. I held your hand to make a root. To stay intact, we must keep everything in. No blood must be lost or stolen. If you bury something, do not pick it up. Chances are it is a beast. It will bite you in the eye. Blindness will take their name. I do not know my grandfather's name. I know he cleaned soup bowls during the Cultural Revolution. I know to stay away from butterflies in butter, from counterfeit faces, to tell them apart. Can you tear yourself apart? The leeches on my back have sprung open. A new organ grows in my heart. It is a double heart. Too much blood makes my eyes milk over. I'm afraid to pour out and keep in. I wobble along the street. Everyone can see. Everyone points. At home, my brother makes a habit of sleeping under transparent surfaces. Our kitchen table is made of glass and glistens when he sleeps. I cough up a failure in the middle of winter. My family huddles in the attic, dark clams. The soap in my hair softens the snow. In summer, pig's blood swelters in a tin. A man kicks my mother. There is something wrong with his foot or she is in love. My mother cuts open his foot. She tells him where the sparks cannot get through. That's where you'll rest. My mother is 17 and she cut a boy. I know her name. Her name is Jin Ai. A boat drops to the floor. Ants gather in corners. My family gathers their faces. This funeral of plenty sings dirges in the marrow. This living hand, now warm and capable. My blood thick with stars. that last couple stanzas when I'm talking about my mom being 17 and cutting a boy did happen. When my mom was 17, there was a boy in her class, and he kept kicking her chair over and over again. And she turned around and she said, "If you kick my chair one more time, I'm gonna bring in a knife and I'm gonna cut your foot." This is China. And he was just kind of like, whatever, as a teenager would. And she does it. She brings in the knife the next day and she leaves it right behind her chair. He kicks her, and then they're screaming of blood, and she runs away and hides in a barn for a while. And he probably had a crush on her, first of all. But she was so kind of embarrassed that she had done this, but she was so full that she really wanted to do it too. This kind of embarrassment of going too far, but glad that she did it at the same time. And I thought this was completely made up. Like, this doesn't seem right. And so I remember I went to China for the first time when I was 16, so around my mother's age when she did that. And she had been back to China in 16 years. And so we roll up to her village, and guess who's the first person running up? It's him. And the first thing he says to her, he's like, "It's been 16 years. And he takes off his sandal. "Do you remember me?" And there it was, some really mangled toe. And I looked at my mother, and I looked at her with one of those moments, I was just like, "You are no joke. I will believe anything you say now." So that's that story. I'm just going to read a few more poems, just two more. One's kind of longer. And I know that there's an Asian American literature class here. Yes? You guys? Yeah? Okay, great. I was kind of looking at some of your questions right before I came here. And I know some of the questions refer to the poems I'm about to read, which is, I'm going to read Guts and Thaw. And one of the poems, Guts, somebody asked, I think, a question like, "Do you hate cats?" I think that's what I remember reading. And, I have an interesting relationship with cats. So that explains the beginning of this poem maybe, but I have a lot of cats that in my life who've thrown up right in front of me. So I don't know if that means I don't like them or that they're trying to tell me something. But this poem is actually kind of inspired by this one time that I went to the hospital, and I try to stay far away from doctors as possible ever. It was like the first time I've been in the hospital. And it was probably because I've been eating too much meat and salt for the majority of my life. And the doctor was just like, "Stop doing that." And so it was one of those moments where I was like, "Oh, my guts, like I should think about the fact that this body exists." I don't know if that has actually changed my eating habits at all, but I was thinking a lot about kind of feeling kind of uneasy, your guts, right, kind of tangled up sometimes. So this poem is called Guts. And of course it has that cheesy double meaning, like I've got guts too, like gutsy, but anyhow. Guts. I enter a room. A cat vomits as if to say, "Welcome home." Scattered bones on the floor, tiles of fur and fever, welcome. Outside, the parks are rinsed clean. Grass sprays across my window. This clean violence for the green and livid. Nothing I say leaves this room. Not a foot, not a single verb. This room is meant to be a cage to swing sweetly in. Arm in arm, slow scythe of each doorway expanding, with each breath I hold in until I can't. Remember, what you can't see can hurt you. I will stay here, getting fat in the eyes. Braced against the wall, I will bite at you. I will take what I've come to claim. Do not cry and cry to no priest. My mother told me when consuming a whale, take one bite at a time, or it will consume you. Take heed, take tail, tongue et al. I entered a room full of garlands slung in the death march. Flowers crowd the sill in whiskey water. I drink until my eyes flood the entire state of Jersey. The moss turns whiskey under my mouth. This year, there will be a mudslide worth watching. This year, we won't need proof. Outside, geese shit on themselves. It is a season of giving, and I gave everything over to you. Forgiveness, apology, forgiveness. Can you imagine roses rotting in the trash? It's simply too much. Delicate February, and its dunce hat. To pull a rabbit out of what? The future is not stupid. To make a critical mass, leave a spoon of honey out for the ants. This will be my army, my kin. The yard is lined with dumpsters I know too well. Sunshine spills on the slick of last night's dinner. My face shines in the slick, subtly sublime. In the case of a tornado, retreats into the deepest interior. Steal anything you can get your hands on, including yourself. Nightly, my army circles the earth's bruise. Split plum of the heart stuck to the floor, I'm unable to rightfully stop. Crows pass by my pupils, recognizing every face I shouldn't. Decisions in confrontation. Best to forgive or fork over your better half. The guts of a cow spill onto the killing floor. I scoop out the guts of a cloud and smear it across my eyes. Intestinal, the false ray of a false sun unravels. I slither to the light, suffocating so. Below the horizon, a crow flies across graves off the interstate. The pouring concrete freezes, paralyzed in ice, smog. Sometimes crickets go off at the same time. Sometimes my legs itch involuntarily. Sometimes I want to be able to hold my own hand. This need is inhabitable, fat tapeworm of the belly, crooning in corridors. And this last poem is kind of interesting because this is the one that is included in Best American Poetry 2015, selected by Sherman Alexie. And I find this strange because it took a long time to place this poem. This poem was rejected so many times. I don't know what would count as so many, but I think for me it was like 25, and then it just started hurting a little bit, and I was like, I'll just send it one more place. And then it got rejected in that last place. And then a very small journal, online journal, asked me for some work. And I was like, oh, well, I guess I'll send over this crappy poem nobody wants ever. They're like, yeah, we'll take it, we like it. And I was like, really? Okay, okay. It had been sitting there for a long time. And, I didn't think much about it. And then I got an email on January 2nd, so the day right after the New Year. And it was a letter from the editors of Best American series, including Sherman. And it said, so good surprise! Your poem, Fall, which appeared in this tiny little journal called Bird Feast, online journal, has been selected for the Best American Poetry 2015. And I put aside the email, I was like, oh please, that's not real. And then I returned to it just 10 minutes later, obsessively updating to see if it was I'm sorry, wrong person. And then I flipped out, I was like, I can't believe this. I can't believe this poem that had been rejected so many times, and I didn't really think much about, was selected out of nowhere. I don't know how he even got it. And it was one of those moments where, when I was an undergrad, I obsessively read all of the Best American series. I was so cheap at the time. I would only buy back copies, for $1 at the used bookstore. I would read 1998's, Best American, and never read the newest one because, who wants to pay for that at full price? And so it was really exciting for me. And for those who know, there was a lot of controversy and a lot of major kind of issues around the most recent anthology with Michael Derrick Hudson. And I think about Michael Derrick Hudson saying that his poem was rejected so many times, and that he would try to he basically put on yellow face, for those who don't know, and pretended to be Yifen Chu, an Asian American, in order to get published. And I was looking at that, I was like, and one, kind of disbelief, but one of those moments where I was like, that this poem had been rejected many times too, and that, if anything, it's harder for me to get published. I can tell you that as a fact, being a woman of color. And I think that it's so funny that this whole journey behind this poem, from where it started in terms of its publication to its end, has been kind of a crazy whirlwind. But at the very core of this poem, and why I love it, and why I didn't give up on it until I did eventually, but then I kind of came back to it. This is a poem for the new year, like completely. I was having a really, really difficult time in my life, and I wanted to write a poem that was all about kind of starting fresh and thawing out, and kind of, you know, for the new year. And so this poem was written literally a year before I got the news on January 2nd, the year after. And so to me, it's like double New Year like poem. So I'm gonna end with thaw, and to me, it's a celebratory poem. It is a poem for New Year. I know it's like May and it's not exactly January, but if you, I'll just take a trip back to January with me and kind of feel what it feels like to thaw out. We're fully thawed out now in spring, but it's a glorious time. Thaw. The trees glowed in water. I had half an ice arm. I waved at the sun for warmth and connection. This melting chandelier of mine, a fever grew from my ankles up. A planet fell out of my mouth. My organs bloomed parachutes in the night. Snow bells rang along my teeth. My verbs were all in disagreement. Swallowed up by turbulence, in the rotten rumble of boiling eggs, I held the cold along the eyelashes of cows. I held my rose-hipped head splitting in two. To remain perpetually aware, a feather suspended itself in air. The fish sitting too long in the sun melted into a sea, cell after cell, my cries imperatives, my root words gone. Long live the day. Thank you so much. Now that I've thawed out, I will drink water and become ice again.
So we have plenty of time for some Q&A with Jane, so raise your hand if you have a question. I'm going to start because I have one, if I may. Why do you think your mother keeps finding her way back into your poems?
So the question is, why does my mother kind of keep coming back in my poems? The answer to that, I think, is difficult in many ways. I'm very close with my mother. She's also a single mother, and so she was kind of a big person in my life. And I think there is a sense of, not necessarily responsibility to kind of have her there, but that she, to me, represents everything about that kind of trip over here. So she sacrificed everything to be here. And I think that, if anything, it's like, what can I do except have her there all the time? That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is that she just won't go away. I don't know what, I mean, if I could write a poem without her, like there, I would love to try. But the fact of the matter is that even when I'm writing in my own voice, it's sometimes her too. It's very, very confusing, actually. And again, she had me when she was 20, and so we had a very kind of sisterly relationship oftentimes when I was growing up. And so It is kind of difficult. I don't know how to really write a poem without her fully there, or even half there, or a third there. But she does find her way there all the time. And usually the follow-up question to that is like, well, what does she think of your poems, or does she read your poems? And I find it strange. I think she found one of the poems. She just got a smartphone, so she's been Googling me. And she found one of the years, I think, one of the years poems in her voice. And the strangest thing happened. She came up to me, or like she told me, and she just said, "Did that really happen?" It's almost like questioning her own experience of it. So she too is entangled with me, like, so that her experience of life can't be separate from me too. And my brother is part of that too. He always shows up in my poems too. But yeah, I can't help it. It's freaky. You look in the mirror, you're like, it's just too close. Jin, Jane, everything's too close. We get our mail mixed up oftentimes too. So yeah, she's a huge part of my life. It's a great question. I think I saw a question way in the back.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your time, Jane.
Thank you.
I believe that was the cat question, but I have a more serious question for you. In Judd, it was a short poem. You said something about waking up with your covers over your face, and it's the first sign of guilt. And I was just curious what you were going through at that time that made you wake up every morning feeling guilty. Like, what was going on with Jane Wong then?
Whoa. Oh, man. Yeah, right? I feel like I'm... that's a hard question. To be honest, I can't even remember when I wrote that poem. But I think I do remember the feeling at that time. And I think it's a good question, actually, because, poems actually transport you back to whenever you're writing them. They're never separate for me from where you are in a particular place and time. So it definitely makes sense. That feeling of guilt, usually when that image of kind of waking up with the covers over my face, I know certainly I was going through a kind of tough kind of relationship at the time, and it was a guilt for not leaving. I wanted to get out, and I felt guilty, like I was guilty to myself of sorts. So it's a different kind of guilt, like I didn't do anything wrong, but staying was wrong. So that'll answer that question, I think, hopefully. That answered that question. But thank you. Thank you. Let's get real here. Wow. Other questions? Yes?
How do you find language playing into the way that you write poetry?
So the question is, how do I find language kind of play in my poetry? Language play?
Yeah.
That's a great question too, because I do love language at its core. I think it is a little bit like play. I don't really find it like, when you there are certain poets I love. One of my best friends, you should check out her work, also an Asian American poet, Hannah Park. She does language play almost like a Rubik's Cube to me. Like it's just like, I'm trying to find the different combinations, and it'll never actually get perfect aligned in her work. It's just always those kind of things. For me, language play is more akin to going to, you're at a table and there's like a bunch of Play-Doh, and that Play-Doh, go way back to when you were a kid, gets gross and disgusting. And the colors start making this weird gray thing, and there's like a piece of hair stuck in your Play-Doh, or like a Cheerio or something. And but the language play for me is messy in the sense that I like making sonic connections, and you can hear that, and then you're kind of still building, like kind of moving things around. But it's always a little kind of it's never fully there completely. Like it comes out in spurts. I don't know. I feel that way anyway. That it'll get very kind of like sonically interesting, and then I'll move away from it, and then it won't do that until it comes back again. And I think I am maybe a distracted Play-Doh player, that I put it down and go somewhere else and think a little bit about image. I love imagery. Like that's probably my favorite thing in the entire world as a poet. And sometimes I can combine those things in terms of language play. But that's a great question. I think that all writers and readers love playing with language in their very different ways, either mathematically so, or the combinations, or sonically, or visually too. That's a great question. Thank you. Any questions?
Speaking of image, it seemed to me that, well, in that thought poem, how you had this, it seems to me, you were saying, I had an impulse, or maybe an inspiration, or a desire to write a poem that had this kind of ritual freeing for me. And I'm struck that how it proceeded wasn't in any sort of like discursive sense. It was all, I have this image, I have this image, I have this image. And I guess you just told us that you kind of tie those images together or step through them maybe sonically, or that reminds you of this other image, or that reminds you, but you're very much more like lyrical poet than some sort of narrative. I'm going to tell you why I'd like to get free of in this new year. So that wasn't a question, but I guess I'm kind of curious how you tie them, but you might have told us that.
That's really great, and I actually really think of myself as a very narrative poet. I think of myself as narrative and lyrical, so that they don't have to be at opposite ends with each other. And oftentimes we think about narrative poetry, that we think of it as kind of, just leading the reader along. It's very almost like prose-like, and yet there isn't this kind of, I don't know, it moves easier. But I like to think of narrative actually as a constellation of imagery, so that narrative to me just is like a bunch of stuff, and you're just making the connection. You're kind of moving through the story in different ways and across poems. I actually kind of just heard myself like, there's a lot of cows going on here, and so that to me is like a constellation that is a narrative. I'm drawing these connections through imagery, and so for me, images are really narrative like stepping points, as much as they are lyrical. And in terms of my process with your noting the kind of like line-to-line imagery, that's what I do. And for those who are writers and you're just kind of like, I don't know where to start a poem, and I should say I really don't believe in writer's block. I think you can write at any point, any time in your life. It doesn't matter if you're, sitting on the bus or anything. I don't believe in writer's block, because you can always see something or note something in the world. And I just have a bunch of notes and a bunch of lines running like in the notebook or on the computer. And usually when I want to start a poem, I'll grab probably 8 or so, just randomly, and I'll just stick them like that. And then my job for me as a poet is to ask myself, how are you going to connect these with that emotive, with whatever you're thinking about in terms of your frame of mind right now. And so weirdly enough, what happens is that it does kind of seem like it's a listing of imagery, but then there's some sort of emotional weight I'm trying to get across, and I'm almost like a bridge builder as a poet. And again, if you're ever stuck, like blank page is terrifying, just grab 5 images and see what you can build around it. And whatever you're thinking about or feeling or want to get across will come out in it. So that's a great comment, because it kind of led me 2 places, but yeah, that's great. Thanks. And I'm always happy to give, like, if you want prompts too, I have a bazillion in my brain that have worked over the years. But yeah.
You mentioned that you used to write fiction, and I'm just curious, like, what kind of fiction did you write, and do you still write fiction, and what made you decide to become a poet instead?
That's a great question about my fiction background and why the switch, or if I'm still writing it. Yes, I began as a fiction writer, and I didn't write a poem until in college. Like, I took a poetry class. I loved narrative. I still love narrative. I read a lot of fiction. I don't write it anymore. I haven't written fiction since 2007. And the poetry class I took when I was an undergrad was almost kind of like I felt like I was kind of cheating a little bit, or kind of something was too much fun, you know. When I finished my undergrad, I moved to Hong Kong for my Fulbright, And my project for Hong Kong was a fiction project. But guess what I did? I just started writing poems. Like all of it was poetry in Hong Kong. And so I was applying to MFA creative writing programs, and I applied only to fiction programs. This is probably saying a lot about me, but at the University of Iowa Writers Workshop, you can apply to fiction and poetry for the same price. A 2-for-1 deal. I couldn't not do it, right? And so I actually applied to, that was the only place I applied for poetry. I applied to 4 other schools of fiction. And I did get into other fiction programs. But when I got into Iowa, they're like, you're in, and I was living in Hong Kong, so I never got an official call. And I just assumed I got into fiction. I was like, yes, my future is a fiction writer. And I didn't know until a month later, or after I accepted, that I was accepted into the poetry program. And it was one of those moments where I was like, well, let's just try something else. And so I ended up going to the workshop for poetry and just left my fiction behind. But that doesn't mean it's gone from me. And I'm returning to prose, actually. I feel very deeply about that. And I'm working on nonfiction essays currently. And so I think they're not very different from each other. But the thing is, with poetry, you get to slow down a little bit with the imagery, slow down with the sound and the line break, and all these other kind of great things about poetry. But I guess with the space of fiction, I couldn't do as much, just because it's so long. But I'm coming back. My poor advisor when I was a fiction student at Bard, when I told him I got it for poetry, he was like, no. And then later on I applied for my PhD in critical work, so English. I'm currently finishing up my PhD at the University of Washington. But I also applied for creative writing PhDs in fiction, and I got in. And my advisor was just like, yes, and I was just like, no, I can't do it. So I've been running away from fiction for the last 10 plus years, and he gets so sad when he's just kind of like, oh, really? That's Matt Johnson. He's a fantastic fiction novelist, so check out his work. And one day, I promise Matt, I'm coming back to fiction, and I'm going to write a novel. And I might be 80 years old, but I'm going to do it for him and myself, but for him, yeah. Thanks.
Other questions?
What are some exercises that you use to surmise a theme of the poem, or a thesis of what point you're trying to convey?
So the question is, what are some themes, or?
How would you say you have a poem that you feel is perhaps talking about 2 different points? How do you gauge which is most strong and most appropriate to your rhetoric?
So the question being kind of if there's 2 or 3 kind of themes in the poem, which one do you kind of decide rises to the top of sorts? I'm okay with them not being, one rising to the top. I kind of like them kind of juggling around or being wobbly, because we ourselves never are just one thing ever. It's not like right now I'm Asian. I'm also a woman. I'm also 31 and wearing these heels right now, or whatever. There's all these other things happening in your life. I think that's really cool, actually. And so if there is oftentimes these themes are so interconnected. I can't, write a poem about, my father, and that's also about maybe this other thing that's happening in my life. It's that juggling. I think is really interesting when you actually have more than one theme. I would highly suggest having more than one theme and letting it just kind of play out and see what happens. But that's a cool question. Thank you.
We have time for a couple more. Blake, you have a question?
I have a question. I guess I was curious, you talk about your process for gathering some images and connecting them. Do you feel like in writing nonfiction prose, right, do you follow a similar process or no?
Nonfiction is really hard. It's really hard. For those prose writers out there, I commend you. That's why maybe I escaped from prose, because I thought poetry was more fun, easy, kind of play around. Writing prose is really hard. With nonfiction, I've been struggling. I've been reading a lot of nonfiction to try to help me through it. But I think for me, I have more of a game plan. And sometimes for me, this one essay I've been wanting to write for 10 years, and I've only gotten like one paragraph down. I still don't know how to do it formally. It's about unlicensed dentists in New York City's Chinatown. My mother does not have any real teeth. And when we were growing up, we would go to Chinatown and read there were unlicensed dentists. You know, some guy that was at a noodle shop suddenly took off his noodle outfit and put on his dentist cloak and was making my mom some fake teeth. And so it's an open secret in Chinatown. Like the police in the area kind of turn a blind eye because the community needs it. Because it's all cash. And these dentists are licensed in China, but because of language barriers, they aren't able to kind of get the paperwork. And so I've been meaning to write this essay. It has a cheesy title right now called Root Canal Street. So anyway, I know. But if it pleases me, at least in the moment, I'll keep it there. And I think part of writing should be fun too. Like if you're pleased by your own pun, just have it hang out there. And then later on, you might chuck it out the window because it's a bad joke or it's a dad joke or something. But yeah, so for that project, I'm I don't know exactly what direction to take. I'm probably going to do a similar poetry thing where I'm just going to gather the pieces and then just kind of figure out what is the real story underneath this topic. It certainly isn't just about unlicensed dentists in Chinatown. It's most likely about my mother and kind of poverty too, and thinking about how what does it mean to not have real teeth. But you would never know. She's a very classy lady, and so it's a very embarrassing thing too. So there's something about that might be another kind of story to that. But I don't know. I'm learning is my answer.
Last chance, folks. Last question.
Fun.
Oh,
Is that
got
question
one.
right there?
Got a couple actually.
Oh,
That's good.
A question I'm curious, beside making most of your poems about your mom in the future, do you have plan to use other subjects to use in your poem?
So great question about kind of other major subjects that I plan to use in the future. I know my mother will always be there just because she will just always be there. But in terms of other subjects, I think that I don't know. I guess a huge thing for me is history. So I have a lot of work that kind of is very interested in my family history in particular. So right now I'm writing poems that engage China's Great Leap Forward, which happened during the 50s, 60s, and the huge Great Famine of just people just dying. And so I've been researching a lot of that. So for me, it is kind of going back to kind of the books and the history and kind of asking my family about it, which they won't talk about. So you kind of have to make up that history in many ways. So that's a huge part for me. And it was, again, that's very particular because I remember when I was in college, I took a Chinese politics class and I saw a documentary on the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution during Maoist China. And it's an image of all of these Chinese people just starved to death, thinking that there was food, but there wasn't food. And it was one of those weird moments where I was sitting in class, I was so far away from China, so far away from my family's history and poverty and whatnot. And it was a moment where I was my grandfather's orphaned. That's strange. He was adopted by an old guy who also lost all his family. And one of those moments was oh God, the history, right? That my grandfather's sisters and his parents died from starvation. And so did this guy that adopted him. And then suddenly the history became very personal. What I was watching on this documentary, and then my immediate family, no one ever said that. But it matched up with the dates. And I was oh geez. So that's kind of what I'm kind of writing about now, I suppose. But to kind of think about, I think it is important to kind of dig into those kind of forgotten histories. And I recently actually just did a TED Talk on that. So if any of you are interested in kind of taking a look at that. Though I was really nervous, and so just mute, I mean not muted, but just kind of like don't watch the video, but you can listen to my voice, because I was just like, I was flailing a lot, so gesticulating a lot. But yeah, so that's a topic I'm very interested in. I think that's like necessary to think about our own histories and make sure that no one silences them too. Yeah, that's great.